Romans 8:18-25. I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. For the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed. For the creation was subjected to frustration, not by its own choice, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be liberated from its bondage to decay and brought into the freedom and glory of the children of God. We know that the whole creation has been groaning as in the pains of childbirth right up to the present time. Not only so, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly as we wait eagerly for our adoption to sonship, the redemption of our bodies. For in this hope we were saved. But hope that is seen is no hope at all. Who hopes for what they already have? But if we hope for what we do not yet have, we wait for it patiently. This is the word of the Lord.
If you're a guest or visitor here with us, my name's James, and I'm going to be helping us as we think about these words together. But I wonder if I can borrow your brains for a moment to ask you a slightly trickier 1137 question. What are you longing for? What are you longing for? What's your hope? It may be that's far too big a question for this time, and quite frankly, at the moment, you're just longing to kind of a good cup of coffee at the end. That the children have left us some biscuits. Maybe a bit further ahead that you'll have a good day, or that you'll have a better night's sleep than the night before. But if we stop and think about it for a little while, it may be there are some bigger things in the future that we've got plans for or longings for. Longings to be loved. Longings for our relationships, our friendships, our family. Perhaps longings for things more tangible, like our career or the places we live. Longings for our retirement or even our next holiday. Or perhaps even longings less about ourselves and more about others, whether that's for our country with its prosperity, for the leaders as they lead us, or for the world, for peace and stability, or for the people around us, the suffering, the struggling, as Mark and Caroline have reminded us this morning, even in our Ferry borough. When a survey was done asking the British public what their longings, their hopes for, the top three that were given were health, finance, and happiness. 1 in 3 people would say their health was their longing, that they'd be happy and healthy long into their life. 1 in 6 of us said finance, that they'd be prosperous and be able to have a good standard of living. And 1 in 7 said happiness. I wonder whether they married up with what your longings would be this morning. And do you think they should be different if we're Christians? Should they have different things in them to add into the mix? If you're an adult that's been around for any length of time, you'll know how much hope is used by leaders to paint a picture of tomorrow, don't you? Whether Barack Obama, back when he ran for president, or dare I say, a current president, painting a picture of how they will make the world a better place. We even had it in the UK, haven't we, with our last election. Leaders promise things. We're used to thinking about hope. But if you're just joining us through this little series we've been doing, we've been working our way through January and February through what the healthy Christian life is. If you want, doing a little spiritual health check. And if you remember, what we've seen is that a Christian, a healthy Christian, just a few verses after this reading, verse 28, is someone who's becoming more and more like Jesus. A work that will go on until the end of our days. And if you want, after those weeks, we saw as Jesus took us around different parts of our body, as it were, and showed us our hearts, that they should be growing in love for him. Or our awareness of ourselves, that we become more aware of our brokenness and sinfulness. Or our emotions, becoming increasingly grateful for Jesus and his death at the cross. Or our character becoming more and more godly? Or last week with Tom, our hearts and actions becoming more and more loving towards other people? Well, today we're thinking about our minds and our hearts and this idea of our longings, our hope. And a hope, a future hope in the Christian faith, in the Bible, of a new creation. I wonder if that hope, that longing, does it feature much in your thinking? Is it there? Is it something, if it is it something you're becoming increasingly excited about? Billy Graham, the American evangelist, said these words: "The greatest need in our world today is the need for hope. We thrive on hope. We rejoice in hope. We witness in hope." And we're going to see this Christian hope isn't kind of a hope that my football team might win a game or that it will stop raining and have sun. You know, that's a vague hope, isn't it? That's wishful thinking. No, this is a sure and certain hope of a perfect new world. It's a hope that, if you want, keeps the Christian heart going, thriving and rejoicing. But it's a hope that my guess might be that's got lost if you're a Christian here today. Maybe as you resonated with that survey, other things would be higher hopes. Or it gets lost just because of the busyness of life, or the struggles and pains and strains that you're facing. Or maybe, just maybe, you've embraced that great British value, cynicism. You know, cynical. We might finally win a gold medal at the Olympics. Yeah, right. We might finally have a summer that's long and warm and hot. Yeah, right. But Paul isn't going to let us have any of those, because he's going to help us see where the priority should be as we come to these verses in Romans. He's going to help us reprioritize, and he's not going to let us give in to cynicism. He's going to show us these are true and certain. And as we come to this great book of Romans, if you want, Paul's been giving us this great tour of God's big plan, as he shows that all of humanity live as though God doesn't exist, and no one is right with him. No one. But yet, through faith in Jesus, by simply trusting in him, we can be brought into a relationship of sins forgiven, of peace between us and God, and his Spirit in our lives. A relationship in these verses that goes on to this future new hope, a new creation, a new perfect world. But as we come to these words of Romans, if you want, they hold up to us like a doctor a diagnosis. And here's the question they ask. Verse 18, are we eagerly longing for the new creation? Are we eagerly longing for the new creation? Come with me to verse 18. If you shut your Bibles, do take them, page 1135, just so you can see what I'm saying is what God longs to say to us. Verse 18, I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. That sounds a bit confusing, doesn't it? The glory that will be revealed in us. What's that? Well, read on verse 19. Here's the for, why. The creation waits in eager expectation. Revealed. Here it comes. For the children of God to be revealed. The glory that is to come is these children of God being revealed. It's like the final scene of a play. It's like when it all comes together and we finally see the threads of the plot finally played out as all the lead actors and actresses come and take their place. And here, the children of God being revealed. Here, as we sang in that song just a few moments ago, is this future glory of God's people who've trusted in Jesus, being in God's place, his perfect new world, under his rule, enjoying a relationship with him for all eternity. That's this glory that will be revealed. And do you see what he says, verse 18? I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed. Now, if Paul was going to join one of our pastoral teams, it may be that I think probably he needs some training, doesn't he? Here, you know, if you said to somebody, I'm sorry you're having a hard time, but don't worry about it. It's meaningless. I mean, you're going to get a smack around the chops, probably, if you came and said that to me. Is that what he's saying? No, he's not trying to minimize the suffering we go through. He's not trying to say cancer, just suck it up. He's not trying to say, the soul-sucking feeling of grief, well, whatever. No. He's not minimizing them. What he's doing is giving us perspective. Perspective. Now, this last week, we got to go back to a place we used to live in Cornwall, and we took the kids to a tiny little Cornish theme park. The first time our youngest son, Zach, had been to a theme park. It really isn't as grand and great as some of us Londoners are used to enjoying. But Zach, as he went in through the reception, found a little train at the ticket booth. The little tiny ride-on train, so you put money in. And he desperately wanted to go on. He's a train fanatic at only 4. And he was desperately sad that we wouldn't let him go on this train. He didn't understand. I want to go on this train. No, we're going into the theme park. When we finally got him round the corner through tears, he saw this water slide as tall as the church tower. And then suddenly, as his face realized that he was allowed to go on it, suddenly the train seemed to disappear into the background. Here's what Paul's doing for us. Look at how brilliant glory is. Not to minimize your suffering, not to say how insignificant your feelings might be, not how desperate we may be as we cling to life itself or go through the valley of the shadow of death. But look how great is glory. This future promise that Jesus' resurrection has made sure, a new world restored, where there's no more tears, no more pain, no more evil, where the headlines say only good happened today, where NHS and funeral directors and Andrex are done out of business, where God himself wipes away the tears from their eyes. Look how great glory is. And this glory that goes on forever, your sufferings that will end, look how great this glory, this new creation is. See, up until a few years of being a Christian, I think I had the wrong idea of heaven. I think I had the kind of white cloud syndrome, or the waiting room syndrome, or the will be boring syndrome. The white cloud syndrome? I think I'd watched the Philadelphia and Red Bull adverts. I thought we'd float on clouds with kind of wings, sort of semi-disembodied, eating cheese and drinking energy drinks of some sort. It seemed like white cloud syndrome, waiting room syndrome, like we'd be sat around kind of waiting for something to happen, or will be boring. I mean, Revelation pictures it as endless singing. I love a good sing-song, but endless? Come on, that's going to be boring, isn't it? But here's this new creation that Jesus shows us by his resurrection, one that's physical and true, one that we almost can't imagine because we only know the fingerprints of brokenness and sin in this world. Look how great it is. Can you see how Paul wants us to long for new creation when heaven is that great and big? But yet I find myself not longing for it. As I look at my prayers and I look at my life, I realize I don't sometimes long for it. I don't know if you're the same. My prayers that become about my health, my well-being, my survival, my success. And then what do I pray for other people? Their health, their well-being, their survival, their success. It's not that they're wrong to pray for, but I've forgotten the weight and greatness of the new creation. I've forgotten to pray for myself and for them, that I fix my eyes on it, that I long for it and be excited about it. That's in my prayers. And then in my life, when I find myself kind of half-hearted about my obedience to Jesus, finding sin like being the thing that will answer my greatest need rather than Jesus. I thinking freedom is to do whatever I want, whatever the consequences. rather than realizing the destructive path it causes. Or just finding myself in bitterness and woe is me rather than actually joy and peace and thankfulness. Both my prayers and my life show that sometimes I'm not longing for this future new creation. As Billy Graham said, this isn't a hope that I'm thriving on nor rejoicing in. But just in case you and I need convincing, Paul brings into the dock, he calls two witnesses, first creation and then the Spirit, to show us that this hope really is what we should be longing for. Here comes the first. Creation, verse 19 to 21, has eagerly been longing for freedom. It's been eagerly longing for freedom. Because he calls them in, doesn't he? Verse 19, creation waits in eager expectation for this final drama. Why? Well, for verse 20, for the creation was subjected for frustration, not by its own choice, but by the will of the one who subjected it. Right back at the beginning of the Bible, Genesis 3 is Adam and Eve say to God, we don't need you, we can run life on our own. As God says, no, you can't. Their relationship is broken, their relationship with God is broken, and creation is broken, as creation is cursed. That's why we have weeds. That's why if you're a gardener, you'll take them out 1 minute and they'll be back again, because creation is broken. That's why creation is broken as it experiences death. The beloved pet no longer lives forever. There's global warming or pollution, or the marks across creation, they show its brokenness. Yes, in our hands, but equally it is cursed, it is broken, and it's longing and waiting, like a bulb in the soil wanting to explode. With what? Look at verse 20 and 21. In hope that the creation itself will be liberated from its bondage to decay and brought into the freedom and glory of the children of God. It longs to come and experience new creation. Do you see how creation itself says that this is a hope? You see, God isn't a God of just the spiritual, but the physical. He demonstrates that as Jesus comes as a person, but Jesus who made the world and redeems the world to bring in a new creation. That's why I'm so looking forward to the new creation, to see it in all its beauty. I mean, go and stand on a mountain or go and look at the beach, whatever it is that you love to do to see creation in all its splendor. Imagine a day when there'll be no marks of stain or brokenness, just beauty. When those who've experienced maybe the joy of struggling to walk will leap. Those without sight and hearing will know the wonders it is of a perfect new creation. Is creation longing for its day? Shouldn't we? But then Paul secondly calls creation and the Spirit into the dock and says, look, they've been groaning, verse 22 and verse 23. Look, verse 22, we know that the whole creation has been groaning. Now, when I do DIY or put up tents, there is normally much groaning, both of those that are doing it and of the stuff of trying to do it, as it doesn't quite work and it slightly groans and creaks. Once put up a tent and then it rained and you could literally hear the tent groaning as it went under the weight of water that I hadn't quite put up right. Is that what Paul's talking about? Groaning, like, Urgh. Well, this groaning is different. Look, groaning is in the pains of childbirth. This is good groaning. This is good groaning. This is knowing that something good is coming. Harry and Lucy are about to enjoy the wonders of this again. Childbirth doesn't mean it's easy. Doesn't mean, hey, this is delightful. Any mums here will tell you exactly that's not the case. But it's growing knowing that something good is coming. It is going to happen. And here's creation crying out, longing for that day when it is redeemed out of the bondage of decay. It's groaning in expectation. And not only that, but look, the Spirit Verse 23, not only so, but we ourselves who have the first fruits of the Spirit groan inwardly as we eagerly await our adoption to sonship. Friends, if you're a Christian here and the Spirit is groaning within you, now, I don't know if you're good at groaning here. I sometimes find myself excellent at groaning. Maybe as Brits, we're good at groaning, aren't we? This isn't a groan like, my life is terrible. But when we find ourselves, oh, Lord, I feel broken. I can't do what I once used to do. If only the brain would keep up. If only the legs would go as fast as they once did. If we find ourselves groaning, longing for a day, and friends, the Spirit is at work. See, the creation and the Spirit are groaning. They're longing for that day. So how much more should we long for that day? It may be as we ask that question of, are you growing in longing for the new creation? You think yourself saying, no, I don't. And it may be that you're not a Christian here today. It's great that you're looking in, friends. It may be this is the first time you've ever heard of this hope, this new creation that the Bible offers. Let me say, at 99% of funerals I've been to, everybody longs for something. There is something about the way that we've been made that means we long for something after death. And maybe this hope that Jesus proves by his resurrection is something that's worth holding on to. Maybe you say, I feel like, I'm kind of longing for it, but I feel like I'm pulled in different directions. Come back next week where we're going to think about letting go of the world. But maybe you find your heart wanting to say, yes, I long for that new creation. I long to grow in increasing excitement. How do I? Well, wonderfully, Paul gives us the medicine. Here's the medicine, verses 23 to 26. Long for the redemption of your body. Pick up in verse 23. We groan inwardly as we eagerly await for our adoption to sonship, the redemption of our bodies. Do you see what's groaning is they're waiting for the redemption of our bodies? A day when your body will be made new, perfect. Verse 24, for in this hope we were saved. That's the hope we were saved in. That's the hope of which Jesus has proved to us as he rises from the dead. That's what we're to long for. As I get increasingly older, I find myself realizing my increasing limitations. The excitement, exuberance, and I don't care of you seems to slightly be replaced with my back hurts, my brain's a bit foggy. Friends, increasingly longing for the redemption of our bodies is a great work of the Spirit and helps us to be excited for that day. A day of no more pain or suffering or mourning. But how do we keep longing? You know, if we thought about trying to use our time wisely, we have a diary to keep us in place, wouldn't we? If we thought about using our finances wisely, we could use a budget. If we wanted to keep our health in check, we maybe need some weights and scales. What would it look like to help that longing for our redemption of our bodies, to keep it in check? Well, I want to suggest to you, treat it like a holiday. Sounds slightly outrageous, doesn't it? But when we have a holiday that we're looking forward to, what do? We make plans. One day, friend, you will not be on this earth. To make plans for that day, whether Jesus returns or you die, is a good thing to do because it keeps the end in mind. It keeps our eternal home very much fresh in our heads and hearts. I'm not on commission, but have you written a will? It'd be a great thing to do, to think about the end and think about what you may do as a result, or to plan your funeral. I've had wonderfully 3 or 4 people talk through with me their funeral plans with great joy as they share kind of what they'd love to happen and rejoicing that they're with their Lord Jesus in this perfect new creation? What would it look like to make plans? Equally, second thing we might do on a holiday, having made plans, is think about it. Think about it, dreaming, meditating on it, talking about it with others, helping like little Zach to remember the present sufferings we are in, the future size of glory. Sometimes we need to talk about it because all we feel is this, the pain, and no one is helping us feel this weight in all its brilliance and greatness. Friends, it may be just over coffee, having destroyed the question, how are you, for you at coffee time. Perhaps next time as you say to someone, how are you, what are you looking forward to about the new creation? Revelation tells us all the wonders of singing God's praise. It doesn't tell us in intricate detail. I'm slightly longing and hoping that for a man that hasn't traveled much, I might be able to go and explore all sorts of exciting places while singing God's praise. But why not talk about it with others? Why not ask for help when you feel like closing in the world around you because your present sufferings become so consuming? How can we help one another to make it bigger and more of a reality in our lives? And thirdly, how might we live like that reality? The person going on holiday, you suddenly find them wearing sunglasses and flip-flops because they're excited about what's coming. What would it look like for us to live in light of that future? If you live 80 years of your life, you have 29,000 days to invest. For me, age 41, I've invested 14 and a half. How will you invest your days? How will you use them in light of the end? How will it help us in some ways reorientate our life based on where we're heading? How might we live a life that to other people looks bonkers but is only made light of because of that new creation? How might we look different in the decisions we make? Or the things we do and say, or the way we use our time, our money, our gifts, our skills, our possessions, the people we hang out with. Because in some ways, if we were to grasp this, all the other things of a healthy Christian would fall into place, wouldn't they? If we were living in light of the end, then I might seek to grow more like Jesus because that's what I'm going to be. I would long to love him more and more because he's the one I'm going to be with for all eternity. I'd be unashamed about my brokenness and my sinfulness because I know that Jesus has died for me and forgiven me. I'll be growing in love and gratefulness for his cross that saved me. And I keep growing in godliness, knowing that's where I'm going to be and what I'm going to be like. And I'd long to keep loving other people because that's who I'm going to hang out with in all eternity. How can we long for the redemption of our bodies? What one thing could you do this week, friends, that would help you long for it? And the second bit of medicine, as a little trailer for this evening, comes from 1 Peter. It's these great words that we're going to read, but it's about investing our suffering. Now that sounds bonkers, doesn't it? Say invest your suffering. We normally might say avoid your suffering, grin and bear your suffering, ask for help in your suffering, but invest, to use it. Well, look at these words from 1 Peter. In all this, he's talked about the hope of the new creation. You greatly rejoice, though now for a little while you have to suffer grief in all kinds of trials. These have come so that the proven genuineness of your faith may be proved. Do you see what he's saying? He's investing those sufferings because they help him to see how precious and genuine that faith in Jesus is. They lift his eyes to the eternal weight of glory. And if you need any demonstration of this, friends, we've had 3 wonderful ladies in our congregation for the last few years who've suffered battles with cancer. And you see how they've used that suffering, how their faces have shone with the face of Jesus in the hardest of times as their faith has grown. As their proven genuineness of their faith is shown to them and to others. They hang on to him, even in the midst of the greatest suffering. Often non-Christians will say to Christians, I can't believe your God allows suffering. It is a challenging question. It's one they've got to answer for themselves. Why is there suffering in the world? We often push it away, but here is God using suffering even for our good to show our genuine faith. And our suffering that lasts just for a brief time before the eternal length and weight and depth and height of that perfect new creation. John Newton summed it up beautifully in the last verse of Amazing Grace. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. Friends, let's take a moment just in the quietness to see how God has been using his word by his Spirit to open up your heart and mind, what he longs to challenge, what he longs to encourage, and how he longs to help you long for that day of a perfect new creation. I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the magnitude and greatness and wonder of that glory that is to come, given to us by Jesus, of redeemed bodies, of liberated creation, of us being round your throne, enjoying you for all eternity. Father, help our hearts to thrive on this hope, to rejoice in this hope, and to long for this hope. We ask it in Jesus' name.